Hey besties and welcome back to my trash channel smiling face with sunglasses. Just wanna say sorry for the wait. I've been dealing with some stuff at school and home smiling face with tear. I won't go into detail but the vid is here now. Also please comment some series ideas you would like to see. Also join my Discord server. Link is in the description clown face. I'm very active on Discord distraught face. But anyways, on with the video distraught face. Upward turned hand gesturing with fingers pinched together. It isn't easy. Part 11. Did I hear that correctly? The older woman sighed. The truth's out I guess, but I did it mostly for you, my daughter. All of them looked over to 𝐤𝐬𝐧'𝐭 who was standing on the spot, hands clenched tightly and trembling slightly. No. This is not what I wanted. I would never want to exploit my own son's happiness for my own wants. I thought it would make you happy to see your childhood best friend. I last saw her God knows how many years ago. I've pretty much forgotten about her. It doesn't matter to me that much. I've pretty much forgotten about her. It doesn't matter to me that much. And sure it was nice of you think about me or whatever. But it was most definitely not your place to sacrifice these boys' happiness for it. She pointed towards Sakuatsu and Atsumu who were stood closer to each other than before, almost in a way to defend one another. Who do you think you are to do that? Qiao stayed silent and squinted her eyes. I did this all for you, and this is what I receive. I could've got Atsumu someone better and you could've found your childhood friend. But here you are, shouting and screaming at me. Are you serious? Can you seriously not see what you've done wrong? I don't know how these two got to know each other or started dating, but I do know that they are happy. And as a mother that's all I could ever wish. And don't you go telling Sakuatsu here that he isn't good enough for Atsumu. I'm sure their relationship is just fine and it's not your place intervene. The two boys smiled at each other. Where are the pictures? What pictures? Oh come on. Her eyebrows arched as she started to take a few steps closer to the older woman. Don't play dumb. Where are they? Why should I tell you? Because he's my son, not yours. Her voice raised. And I will not allow you to have such images of him. Are you a creep? Where are the fucking images? There was silence for a moment before the older woman started to reach her hands down to her pocket, unbuttoning one of the buttons, keeping it closed and slipping her hand into it. These? She then grabbed the images and turned them around so that they could all see. Atsumu's cheeks heated up slightly in embarrassment as he didn't really want his mother to see them. Hand them over. Woman's eyebrows arched as they stared fiercely at each other, but to everyone's surprise the woman simply sighed, ducking her head while raising the hand holding the images. She handed them over, of course not without one last dirty look towards Sakuatsu. 𝐤𝐬𝐧'𝐭 took them into her arms quickly, in case her mother would abruptly change her mind and try to snatch them back. She then looked down at the images in her hands and her face formed a small smile. You know. She turned around to face the boys. These are actually really cute. Don't believe what she's saying. You two are perfect for each other. She then offered her hands out to them. The pictures held in both of them. You can keep them if you'd want to. But at the same time that might be a little weird for you. Saying that they were taken by someone who was stalking you. Sakuatsu rubbed the back of his head nervously and Atsumu gave his mom a wide but slightly nervous smile. Not thanks ma. I don't think I'd be able to keep them knowing that she took them. 𝐤𝐬𝐧'𝐭 nodded and smiled at the pair. What should we do with them then? Burn them. Okay, maybe burning them is a little extreme. Do you want me to rip them up or something then? Atsumu turned his head slightly so that Sakuatsu was in his view. He gave him a little nod, confirming that he was okay with it. Yay, that's okay. Alright, not here though, maybe later. Atsumu nodded but not before being stopped by the sound of a woman laughing to herself. All of them turned to the sound of the noise which was coming from Qiao. They could see her reaching towards her phone what was positioned beside her. She quickly picked it up and they watched her tap on her phone quickly. She had a stern, concentrated look on her face as they watched her finger scroll on her phone. The laughing didn't stop. Ma? What are you doing? The woman only looked up at her daughter for a split second before looking back down at her phone. Ma. Ichika started to walk closer to her mother to see what could possibly be making her laugh like this, but she was stopped by a swift movement of the woman's arm. She turned her phone around, revealing a private message between someone called Sakuatsu. What is this? The woman continued to snicker. Did you really think I'd give it up so easily like that? PFFFT. What a joke. What are you trying to say? In the end I always get what I want. She turned her phone back around and continued to tap on it, making one over-exaggerated tap to finish it, a large wide smile evident on her face as she slowly turned it around to face the group again. The woman aimed a cold stare towards Sakuatsu. Hope you like the little gift I got for you. She then smiled widely, seeing Sakuatsu's eyes widen and mood worsening as his head dropped slightly lower. Atsumu was quick to comfort him, whispering small words of comfort into his ears and placing kisses on the boy's cheeks. How did you get their number? The grin never left the woman's face as she sat higher in her chair. It's simple really. When I posted those pictures I also wrote a note. And of course on the note I wrote my number. And them being angry and wanting to know more, they messaged me. Who wouldn't after finding out their son was gay? Ichika's mouth opened wide. Only sick people like you. They should accept him. He's nothing unusual. You're insane. Completely insane. She ducked her head lower as she felt tears forming in her eyes. I don't want to say these things to you. Yeah, my mother. If I was attracted to women, would you not accept me? There's nothing wrong with it. There was a sound of shuffling as the old woman moved again, picking up her phone again, revealing some new texts. The smile on her face widened even more as she read them, unlocking her phone. He wants to know where you are. The statement was clearly directed at Sakuatsu. I think that's a great idea. Ma. Please don't. Ichika quickly ran over to her mother, snatching the phone out of her hands and reading what she had sent. But she was already too late as she read her address across the screen. She bit her lip and collapsed onto her knees, placing her head into her hands, covering her eyes. I'm sorry you have to go through this. She continued to make barely audible apologies before pulling herself together, standing up and turning to her son and his boyfriend. She let out a few sniffles and rubbed her eyes. She saw Sakuatsu's state. He was shocked and had frozen in the moment, wrapped in Atsumu's hold. Atsumu tried to hold in his tears and his bottom lip quivered in doing so. Boys, can you go to your room? Atsumu wiped his eyes in case any tears had accidentally escaped his eyes. He nodded and started to release Sakuatsu from his tight hold, giving him a peck in the cheek. Oomi? Sakuatsu didn't say anything but made sure it was obvious that he had acknowledged what he has said. Come on, let's go. Without saying anything, Sakuatsu nodded and Atsumu grabbed his hand, leading him up the stairs and into his room. Ichika let out a sigh, hearing the door slam. She turned around, finally realizing that Sarah was still there. Oh, I forgot you were here. I'm sorry about that, but you can go home now. But, don't worry, they'll be fine. I hope. But you should go home. Don't want to worry your parents. Ichika gave her a small smile and Sarah nodded hesitantly, turning around and seeing herself out of the door. As soon as Ichika noticed Sarah was gone, her smile fell. She walked over to her mother and sat down next to her, staring off into the wall. You can go home. Qiao looked over to Ichika with a raised eyebrow. Why should I go home? I'm perfectly fine here. I'm sure those two have a lot on their minds right now, and I'm also sure that seeing your face won't make that any better. I'm sure it's fine. Go home. Get out. She cut her off, her eyes wide and eyebrows arched with squinted eyes. Qiao scoffed but quickly grabbed her phone, giving her daughter an unamused look before standing up and walking away. She stopped for a moment, just as she was about to leave the room. You should get prepared. You're going to have some visitors sometime soon. Then she set off walking again, walking out of the room and towards the door. Ichika let out a loud sigh as she collapsed into her arms. Hearing the door slam, she held her face tightly as her body started to tremble and her eyes started to water. She let out sniffles and started to grasp her hair tightly. Fuck. You know, Ma. I really had hope. I really thought you weren't this selfish. Her bottom lip trembled and she ducked her head further down, trying to not make a sound, not wanting to make the two boys worry any more than they had to. 1 hour later. Atsumu and Sakusa laid on Atsumu's bed together, interlocked in a warm hug while squeezing each other tightly, trying to give one another some sort of comfort in the situation. They stayed silent, neither knowing what to say, just wanting to enjoy what could be the last time they get to be with each other. They both shuffled in their position and looked at the door after hearing a light knock at the door. "Come in." His voice was quiet and very muffled due to his clogged up nose. After a few seconds, the door slowly opened, revealing his mother with slightly red eyes but a soft smile on her face. "Hey, how are you guys?" Her voice was almost in a whisper as she walked further into the room and sat down on a stool. Seeing her do so, the two sat up from their laying position. Neither said anything. They both just stayed silent. "Look, I don't want to alarm you guys or anything, but Sakusa, your parents are going to be here anytime soon, I believe. But I just want to let you guys know that I'm gonna do my best, okay? I don't want to see either of you like this. Sad. I want everything to turn out for you guys. No matter what, we will find a solution, okay?" She smiled softly at the pair and rubbed her eyes. Standing up, the two gave her a soft smile back despite being sad. They knew that it would give the woman some confidence. She then started to head out of the room. She didn't really expect the two to say anything anyways. She gave them one last bright smile before walking out of the room and closing the door. She then headed down the stairs and made her way to the living room, sitting down, awaiting Sakusa's parents. Atsumu and Sakusa didn't move much, just embraced each other tightly and tried to think positively. "We'll be okay even if your parents force us to split up. I'm sure that we'll find out a way." Sakusa just mumbled and placed a kiss on Atsumu's lips while stroking the boy's cheek. "We will. Dash. Knock knock." Ichika's head quickly turned up at the sound of the front door knocking. She let out a deep breath that she felt that she was holding in for a lifetime before wiping her eyes, making sure she at least looked slightly presentable. She then stood up and walked out of the living room and towards the front door. She didn't even care to check who it was. She already knew. She let out one last deep breath before quickly opening the door and stepping back. And of course she was met by both of Sakusa's parents. Kiyumi's father's eyebrows were arched deeply and his nose was scrunched up. His fists were clenched tightly at his side and his arms were clearly tensed up. Kiyumi's mother was to his side, her face showing little to no expression, though you could see her eyebrows shallowed down into her forehead. "I am here for my son. Nothing else, excuse me." The man's eyes squinted slightly. "My son. I'm here to take him home. Sorry for any trouble he may have caused." The man then tried to enter the house, but Ichika stuck her arm out, showing the man that he was not invited to enter, her eyebrows mirroring his "I didn't invite you to come in. Please stay outside." "But my son. You can wait. He's not coming home with you anytime soon." "What? But he's my son, not yours." His tone sharpened, and although feeling slightly threatened, Ichika tried her best not to lose her composure. "It's not really my place to say something about the way someone parents their children, but I can't help it this time. You're a poor excuse of a parent." "Excuse me? I can parent Kiyumi however I want to. You can't change that." Her fist clenched and she took a step backwards, her arms beginning to tremble and breath deepening. The two outside seemed to take this as an invitation to invite themselves into the house, though Ichika didn't say anything about it. "Where is my son? I'd like to take him home." "Now I'm not going to say that. He doesn't want to come home with you. You don't know that, Kiyumi." He called out loudly, expecting his son to reply from wherever he was, but received no reply. Ichika positioned herself in front of the two, trying her best to guard any way that they could get further into the house without making it too obvious of where Sakusa and Atsumu were. "I do know. Your son doesn't want to come home with you again. You don't know that." "I do. I really do. Your son ran away from home for a reason. It must have been so toxic for him. I barely said anything to him. You don't even know what you're on about. Stop acting like you do." Ichika could feel the rage in his voice and she wouldn't have lied about it. It really frightened her, but she had to keep strong for the sake of Sakusa and Atsumu's happiness. "Your son doesn't feel safe at your house. His house, his home. He lives with us and he's perfectly fine with it." Ichika scoffed. "Are you fucking blind? Do you even talk to your son about how he feels? Stop telling me how to parent him. You know nothing about us." Sure, I know nothing about you and your family dynamics, but if your child is too scared to go back to his house, then there is some clear problems. He isn't scared. Why do you think he ran away? Shut up, you know nothing. I know that your son is hurting. I know that he's craving his parents' validation. He just wants you to accept him. He's not gay. She let out a deep breath combined with something of a laugh. You're in denial. Your son can't help who he loves. He's not gay. He has a boyfriend. Not for long. The room fell silent and 𝐤𝐬𝐧'𝐭 subconsciously took a step backwards. What? My son isn't gay. He's not. He's not attracted to men. I know it. I know it. I do not have a gay son. I refuse to have a gay son. Just because you don't want him to be gay doesn't change who he likes. The man scoffed and turned to his wife, who had not yet spoken. You said she was a childhood friend, so I had hoped this wouldn't happen. I haven't spoken to her in ages. I didn't know what she'd be like. Though, I'm kind of glad to see you again. It's been a while. The woman smiled a little and 𝐤𝐬𝐧'𝐭's hand clenched and she let her head drop down to her chest. You know, I really wish I could say the same. What? She looked up again to meet the woman's eyes. You probably would've missed you, but all I feel towards you right now is anger. What? Why is that even a question? Her teeth clenched tightly and she started to tremble even more with anger. Honestly, after hearing this bullshit, I couldn't care less if we were childhood friends. I don't give a fuck. You guys should be disgusted. Your own son doesn't feel safe at home. You're not letting him be who he is, and as a parent you should accept him no matter what. You're fucking disgusting. It's none of your business who he is attracted to. Shouldn't you just want him to be happy? He isn't there to follow in your footsteps. He isn't there to carry on the family name. He exists to be happy. And if you can't realize that he is unhappy, and that the reason that he's unhappy is because of you, then you should be ashamed. The room fell silent once again. Just the two families staring at each other. Neither of the Sakuatsas had any way to reply. I don't get it. How can he be gay? Life would be so much easier for him if he would just be normal. 𝐤𝐬𝐧'𝐭's mouth dropped open and her eyes widened. Normal? Are you fucking serious? He isn't a fucking alien because he's attracted to men. It's normal. And it's not like he had the choice in who he is attracted to either. She sighed. You don't have to understand it. You've just got to respect it and leave him to do him. It's not your life. It's his and he can do whatever he wants with it. No one said any more and it was silent for a few moments. The man turned to his wife and let out a deep breath. Let's go home, the woman nodded. He then turned to 𝐤𝐬𝐧'𝐭. I don't accept it. I don't accept he's gay, he sighed. But it's not my decision. If it was, he wouldn't be gay, but it's not, so I guess I'll just have to put up with it. Do me a favor. Tell Kiyomi that I would like to speak to him. Not now. Sometime soon. He connected his hand with his wife's and started to walk off back to the door. Tell him he should pay us a visit and we can talk about this. And he could maybe start to live with us again. He gave a final nod to 𝐤𝐬𝐧'𝐭 before walking out of the door and closing it behind himself. 𝐤𝐬𝐧'𝐭 smiled to herself. She knew that she didn't fully break through to him, but she was glad that this might be a start of a change in the family. She was glad that Sakuatsu and Atsumu could be freely happy. She turned around and headed up the stairs quickly. She then knocked on the back of Atsumu's door and was invited in by the sound of her son saying, "Come in." She complied, walking into the room, only to see that the boys hadn't moved much. They were still in the bed, though this time sat next to each other on the edge. Their eyes were red, showing that they had been crying. "Hey." She walked closer to the boys with a smile on her face. "How'd it go?" Her smile widened at the question and she kneeled down in front of the two. "I think there's going to be some change and for the better." The two's eyes opened wide. "It's all going to work out. Don't you worry." She turned to Sakuatsu. "Your dad didn't say you had to come home right now. He just said when you're ready he would like you to pay him a visit." Sakuatsu smiled for what was probably the first time in a while. 𝐤𝐬𝐧'𝐭 then stood up and walked over to her son, wrapping her arms around him and holding him tightly. I love you too, Ma. Thank you so much for this, really." She smiled and let him go, moving to Sakuatsu and wrapping her arms around him. It startled him slightly, but he eventually wrapped his own arms around her too. "I know you have germophobia and you're probably a little uncomfortable with this right now, but you're just going to have to get used to it." Sakuatsu smiled. I'm not going to lie to you, it's going to be hard. The year or so is going to be hard for you, but that's okay. I'm going to be here to support you not matter what, because as far as I'm concerned, you're already a part of the family. All three of them smiled and a few tears were let out. But they all knew that everything was going to be okay. As 𝐤𝐬𝐧'𝐭 said, life was hard for Sakuatsu at home. His parents had to get used to the idea that he wasn't going to be their so-called perfect child, but it was easier said than done. Sakuatsu eventually stopped trying to get validation from his parents. He knew it would take years for that to happen, but he also didn't need their validation as he had found home with the 𝐤𝐬𝐧'𝐭. They were always there for him and were like the family he never had. But of course he couldn't stay at the 𝐤𝐬𝐧'𝐭's house forever. They weren't his parents. So he eventually went back to live with them. Thought he still spent the majority of his time with 𝐤𝐬𝐧'𝐭. But then he moved back in with the 𝐤𝐬𝐧'𝐭 as soon as he turned 18 and was allowed to leave his parents. So there was not much point in moving out in the first place. 𝐢𝐬𝐧'𝐭 would make a few comments about how Sakuatsu could live with them, but not Suna, when he knew full well that the only reason why Suna didn't live with them was because he didn't was to be too far from his parents. Although he did practically live at the house as for 𝐤𝐬𝐭. Although 𝐤𝐬𝐭 knew that she should have probably reported to her to the police, she just didn't have the heart to do it. She was her mother after all, and she did raise her. She still came around to the house every so often, but 𝐤𝐬𝐭 made it clear that if she made one wrong move then she wouldn't be welcomed anymore. But they got their happy ending. Even if it was complicated to get there, it wasn't perfect. But it's all that they needed. 1 a.m. 𝐤𝐬𝐧'𝐭 and Sakuatsu sat side by side on a park bench. 𝐤𝐬𝐧'𝐭's head leant on Sakuatsu's shoulder, both with loving smiles on their faces. They stared off into the moonlit sky and the shining stars what were twinkling back at them. They held each other's hand tight. Thank you, 𝐤𝐬𝐧'𝐭. 𝐤𝐬𝐧'𝐭 looked up from his position, laying in the crook of Sakuatsu's neck. Awaiting whatever Sakuatsu was to say next, he quickly placed a kiss on the boy's chin. What do you mean, Omi? Sakuatsu stared into the crescent moon and then down at 𝐤𝐬𝐧'𝐭, the moon highlighting the deep black of his eyes. It's not just one thing. Just, thank you for everything, 𝐤𝐬𝐧'𝐭. 𝐤𝐬𝐧'𝐭, still confused, continued to look at him. I still don't get what you mean. Sakuatsu cut 𝐤𝐬𝐧'𝐭 off by placing his hand under his boyfriend's neck and pulling him in for a short kiss. They both blushed at the sudden act but smiled into it. Thank you. Thank you for everything. He smiled while starting to play with the blonde locks in front of him. 𝐤𝐬𝐧'𝐭 smiled back. I don't know where I'd be without you. Thank you for always being there for me. Thank you for always supporting me through everything. You've always been there when everyone else wasn't, and it really means too much to me. You're amazing. You're my everything. 𝐤𝐬𝐧'𝐭's cheeks heated up into a bright red and he pulled himself closer into his boyfriend, hiding his face in his chest. You're funny, you're smart, you're cute, you're calm but also hipper, and also an idiot. 𝐤𝐬𝐧'𝐭 looked up at him with a pout on his face. Idiot, you just said I was smart but you're also my idiot. 𝐤𝐬𝐧'𝐭's face heated up again. You make no sense, you're still my idiot though. I can agree to that. They smiled to each other and gave one another another short kiss. Thank you to Omi. I love you. I love you too. Finn. Hey besties. Hope you enjoyed the video. Sorry it took so long to come out. I've just been dealing with some stuff, but anyways. Please comment some series ideas. I'm clueless right now. I have a one-shot idea and I low-key wanna make some pointless fluff because that makes me happy. Anyways, thank you for listening and I'll see you in the next video. Smiling face with hearts.